Welcome to the With You and For You podcast. Our desire is to equip college-age students within the Edmond, OKC area by discussing topics and questions that are relevant to our generation. With that in mind, let's get to the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to the With You and For You podcast. It is Riley Jackson, your host, along with the crew as usual, Krista Smith, Tyson Hill, and Kyle Thomas.
Almost wasn't the crew as usual.
Almost wasn't.
Did you have written in your notes for the little banter right here or no?
Yeah, I did.
Okay,
Yes.
cool.
Yeah,
We can
it's right
continue.
here.
Yeah, you were so late.
Really late.
Oh, okay. I have no comment.
Which
Guys.
is funny because Chris is normally the one on time.
I know.
I am
Like
always
waiting
on time.
for us.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Like me
And here
you,
we
and
are.
it was-
Listening to her Christian rap songs.
That's right.
Yeah, just jamming, just preparing my mind for
Not
the day.
today.
You know? not
Not today.
today
Today.
though.
Yeah.
Not today.
I was just
We-
like sitting at home, reading my little Bible, and then I get this text from Tyson. And I was like, "Well,
How
this
did,
is
how
awkward."
did you not see
So
any
I
of the
didn't
other
see
texts?
Riley's
I
text.
really did not. I really like. I literally do not know how I missed that because when you were like Riley texted us this morning, I went back and I was like, I didn't even see that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So-
I was
Hey,
going to make
hey,
fun
Riley, I
of
care
Riley
about
for
you.
reminding us every week. I was like, of course we know we meet at 9:15, but apparently
Krista
don't.
needs it. But
I
Krista
needed
needs
this
it.
one.
Krista needs it the
This
night
one
before.
time.
So every Monday night,
Oh, Monday night. Okay.
Krista
Yeah,
needs
maybe
a
if you do it the night before.
I'll
then.
do
Krista
that.
needs a nice reminder text.
Okay, guys.
do-
9:15.
I just want to
I
point
got
out
you.
that you do something wrong one time, and Kyle just will never let you
and
forget
sin enters the world.
it. I mean, that is true.
This
Yeah,
is a very clear.
it's a very gospel related.
Yes, this
mistake
is
that I
a
made
very
today.
real illustration of sin
it's the
in the
fall of
world.
man.
And then we say, hey, you know what?
It's okay.
We're just giving you a hard time. It's okay.
Yeah.
Depravity.
We've all been late. I actually thought I was going to be late.
You
Well,
were
you were.
late.
You
You
were.
were like 15
You were just
minutes
no,
late.
less
no. I thought I was going to be like real late.
Oh.
Oh, 15 minutes isn't real late?
No,
That is kind of real late.
it's not.
She was like 30
Compared to
minutes
Well,
late.
I know. I
It
was
is-
also really late. Like I
Double back.
understand.
Compared to
that.
Krista, it is not really late. We actually, except for Tyson, have all been late.
No, I've been late.
Tyson was
Oh,
late.
yeah.
Yes,
I was late
he
the
has
first
So
time.
we've all been late.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
this
This season.
semester.
Yeah.
This season.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's fine.
all right.
Hey, it's okay.
We'll move
We're-
on.
we're
This is the
working
part
on
of the
Clearly
episode
our
everyone
gifting
skips
is-
anyways. So.
Our gifting is
Okay.
not showing up on time
Yeah.
consistently. That's not in our gifting.
Yeah.
That's not in our gifting?
Apparently not.
Well, not.
Yeah. You should.
Nice,
You
nice
should.
segue.
You should take the tie-in.
Yeah, when you take the time, you should just be like, "Welcome back, people who skipped."
So if you're just tuning in, today we're talking about spiritual gifts. If you haven't heard of spiritual gifts before, they are essentially gifts and talents that the Lord has blessed you with to fulfill His great commission. We find a list of spiritual gifts in the Bible in Romans 12 and 1 Corinthians 12. And this list includes 15 different talents, which are prophesying, serving, teaching, encouraging, giving, leadership, mercy, word of wisdom, word of knowledge, faith, healing, miraculous powers, discernment, speaking in tongues, interpretation of tongues, and finally helps. So I get that was a lot. That was a lot of words right there. And if you just heard that whole entire list and you're kind of thinking to yourself like, man, I really don't know if I fit in any of those, if I have any of those like giftings, you're kind of thinking that like, is everyone gifted with something or is it just some people?
Everyone's gifted with something.
Oh, really? Why is that?
I don't know, Kyle. You seem like you would have answer. Well, we all serve a purpose. We all serve a role. We're a part of the body, and so like no part of the body is going to not serve a purpose. And so some of us just find it hard to find where to serve and hard to be obedient in service.
Okay.
Yeah, we talked about this last year on a Thursday night, kind of the idea of, gifting in community. And one of the things that I think as I was studying, like they said, gifts are not given for rivalry and jealousy, but for the common good. And And I think oftentimes we are gifted. We may not know what those things look like, or we want somebody else's gifting, right? It's like, oh, hey, well, this person's outspoken. They're very good with their words. They talk, a lot. They're very confident. I want that, not what God's given me. Or, and even some of these other things like, oh, well, I'd rather have like this gift of, discernment or, these types of things, or like, I'd rather be more mission, and we just kind of really are focusing on the wrong thing when some of it is us just realizing, okay, well, Lord, how have you gifted me, and how can I use this to build up the body?
So are some gifts like do they weigh more than others, or are they more important than others?
I don't think so.
No.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what Tyson said about, Tyson and Kyle about like building up of the body. And in 1 Corinthians 12, it talks about like how the body is made up of different parts, but each part has its own function and job, basically. So that's how that is too. Like Kyle was saying, somebody could have the gift of like teaching, but somebody could have the gift of just serving, and both very different, but both are as equally important as sharing the gospel and having others come to know the gospel.
So you're saying like a toe is just as important as like a thumb?
I think that's what Paul said. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that like the hard thing that Kyle was talking about is like some people really, really want to be someone they're not. And so that's where you kind of have to wrestle with that. And it's from a sense of pride and like, okay, like I want what they have. I want the giftedness they have. But like living out your giftedness is way better than trying to fake where someone else is gifted. And so all gifts are equal, but like we do have people in positions that adds pressure because like, yes, like people who serve in ministries who aren't up there speaking or singing, like may not have as much pressure from the body to be perfect as those who are on the stage. And I mean, Paul talks about when he looks at like qualifications for an elder, like there's qualifications for these positions, but like giftedness can be used anywhere and it has no better than or equal to, or sorry, it is equal to, it's no better than or lesser than.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, really, 1 Corinthians 12 shows us that, right? Like, as you kind of read, I mean, verse 4, now there are different gifts, but the same Spirit. There are different ministries, but the same Lord. And there are different activities, but the same God produces each gift in each person. Manifestation of the Spirit is given to each person for the common good. To one is given a message of wisdom through the Spirit, to another a message of knowledge by the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, to another gifts of healing. And gifts of healing, these types of things, like he lists off these things showing, hey, like, but these are all from God. He has given these things to these people. And so we need to acknowledge that. And we also need to understand, like, okay, that doesn't mean one is better than the other. Even though one may have, like, I don't know, like visibly you may be able to see it, right? Like I think of some people in my life that I've encountered that when it comes to teaching, like they're just, I mean, not that they haven't practiced and they haven't worked hard, right? But there's also just those people that's like, man, like this just comes kind of natural to them, but they've also put an effort in this. So I think that's the other thing is like gifting isn't necessarily like, oh, I just was born and now I'm really great at this thing, right? It's like, no, effort still is important, right? I think I remember seeing it was a video of like Ed Sheeran, and he was like, yeah, people will be like, oh man, you're just so naturally talented, like check it out. He like played this song that he sang early on when he was younger, and he just vocally did not sound great. And he was like, nope, I had to put in a lot of work and like a lot of practice. But that doesn't mean that there also isn't a gifting and an inclination towards something like that. And so it is also these things. It's like, hey, okay, you think of maybe even being extroverted. All right, like that doesn't mean that you can't calm down and be intentional about listening to somebody. Like you can't, have some introverted tendencies or work on being intentional and having some of those introverted things of listening to somebody and really not being loud all the time or whatever. But it also means, hey, I need to recognize like where I'm at same thing with, maybe some of those introverts, like, hey, maybe you're very good and keen on listening and people really appreciate that about you, but you're trying to be super outgoing and it just comes across as kind of awkward, Like, you don't have to wrestle with these things. Like, it's just kind of acknowledging, hey, here are my strengths, here are my weaknesses, and how can I kind of help, use these things for God's glory.
Wait, I'm sorry. I have a question, and it came from what you were saying about just like being, like, saying like, oh, you're just like born with this gift. With spiritual gifts, are we, like, when we become Christians and like we like are seeing our gifts and things like that, do we have the same gift like our whole life, or do our gifts like change in different seasons? I've just always wondered that, and I was like,
Yeah. I think, honestly, like, I think they can change. And I mean, people may disagree with me on this, but I try to think through, early on when obviously the spiritual gift surveys that you can take are able to be manipulated if you go into with that
Correct.
intent. As
Took a whole class on it.
as a psychology major, it's like, oh yeah, I know what this question's asking me. Like, I'll give it a 0, like, or a 1, But I really do believe life experiences, things that you go through. Like, I may not be, have been high in mercy as a college student. It's like, oh no, like I was super black and white. I mean, I know I'm still pretty black and white now, but everyone, gosh, but it's one of those to where, like, I am probably higher in mercy now than I was then, and it can be because of, okay, hey, like, I have children now, like, I've seen, things. I've done ministry for over a decade. Like, a lot of these things have influenced that to where those things can change. Now, there are certain things, when you think of kind of what he mentions in 1 Corinthians 12, a message of wisdom, a message of knowledge, to another faith, another gifts of healing, to another the performance of miracles, to another prophecy, distinguishing between spirits. Like, these kinds of things may be more set in stone, but that also doesn't mean it's like, okay, well, we can grow in wisdom, right? We see the beginning of wisdom is fear of the Lord. Well, as I continue to dive into his word and learn about him, like, Lord willing, I'm becoming more wise in the things I'm deciding to do and whatnot. And so I think you can also grow in, discernment as you've kind of experienced some things like, I made a terrible decision about that thing. I'm not going to do that again. Like, you start to pick, notice these things, pick these things out. So I think it doesn't have to be like, oh, and that's the other thing is I don't think you justify, right? Like, I can't sit there and be like, hey, I'm not an organized person. And I know this isn't necessarily a spiritual gift of organization. That's not what I'm saying. But as an example, like, I can't be sitting there like, oh, hey, my tendency isn't to be organized, so I'm justified in being disorganized. No, that's silly. Like, oh, hey, for me to be a faithful, good steward, like, I probably need to be organized in some form or fashion. And, and I think that can translate into other things. Like, it doesn't justify me not partaking or participating in these other things when it's like, oh, sorry, nope, that's not my spiritual gift. That's on you, dog. My spiritual gift's not evangelism. I don't share the gospel. Like, it's silly. Why would I do that? Like, that's my flesh and my sin, doing that.
Yeah. I think we can look at it as in some video games you have starter characters and they have different traits and attributes.
Oh, you can be a part of this now, Krista.
Yeah.
You can be a part of this conversation.
Hogwarts Legacy, yeah.
But Hogwarts Legacy, that's right. You can't hide from video games anymore.
But they have
You're
different
in.
traits and attributes that you kind of start with. And so, like, the Lord has gifted you in certain areas to be immediately effective. And then other areas, the Lord wants you to grow in those. And so, like, yeah, some of these things, okay, maybe they're more set in stone. Like, okay, maybe the Lord will never give me the gift of healing or whatever, or prophecy or whatever. But yeah, like wisdom, discernment, like there are growable traits in this. And there are things that, like, foundationally we kind of just start off not better, with a greater ability to do than others. And so we still have to work at it. We still have to, perfect that craft for the Lord. We can't just, like, start off at like 50% and then be like, well, that's gotten me this far. I'm going to stay here. Like we have to still continue to be with the Lord and learn how to use our gifts better.
And I do want to say, like, if you do go into something, like for me, it was kids ministry. I started kids ministry when I was a freshman in high school. I'm not gonna lie, I sucked at it. I was terrible because like I didn't know really how to just get down on the kids' level, relate with them, and be like be an authoritative figure in their life, but learn how to have fun at the same time. I just didn't know how to like work with the kids. And what I really encourage you to do is not to give up. Be like, oh, well, I'm not good at this. Like, I'm just going to step out of this ministry. Or if like you're serving in like homeless ministry or something like that, and you're going out and sharing the gospel and like you suck at it the first couple times, that's going to be natural. Unless like it's something that you are completely gifted with, that the Lord is given you. That's awesome. And that's something that you should use for the glory of the Lord. Oftentimes you're just not going to be the greatest at things. But there's going to be those rare times where like you're going to find out what you're spiritually gifted with. And the Lord's going to reveal those things by you're just being able to do it. Like, oh, wow, okay, this is something I enjoyed, and this is something that I was proficient in and I could do well. But other times there's going to be things where you're not going to be good at. And sometimes you just got to stay in it and work through it and get okay at it and get better and get better. It took me 8 years, and I still think I'm not that great at kids ministry. I've been in it for a long time.
Riley, you think you're not that great at a lot of things, though.
Well,
because you tear yourself down.
That's true. Okay.
All right, next question. Gotcha.
That's how it is. Sorry. But yeah, so like just don't give up if you feel like you're not great at something. Stay in it for a little bit. Try it out.
And you don't have to be great.
Yeah.
Don't strive for greatness.
What's the goal?
Strive for obedience.
Yeah.
The goal is to be obedient and faithful, right?
Yeah.
And so in those, 8 years of you being like, man, I feel like there's still times. Well, that's ministry and that's life.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter. I mean, there are people that, hey, they do the profession for 30 years and then they make a simple mistake. And it's like, still don't got it all figured out. Like
still learning.
Yeah. So the goal is just to be faithful.
Yeah. Yeah. So can you guys kind of go into like what your spiritual gifts are? And no, Tyson,
No.
you can't? Okay.
No.
Well, everybody other than Tyson, can we, how?
I think we start with Tyson.
and not only like what your spiritual gifts, but like how you figured it out.
I've said this too many times on this podcast. I'm gifted in discernment. And I don't really know how I figured that one out. Probably people pointing it out to me. So I have this thing that I really think that if I'm like good at something, everyone else is probably pretty good at it too. Just because I think like I'm pretty average. And so it's probably someone pointing it out to me. But I don't know, like discernment, wisdom, teaching. These are things that kind of come naturally to me that I'm gifted in. And yeah, I don't really know. I don't know how to answer your question about how I've discovered them.
Yeah. Was it just like by doing those things and realizing, this comes easy. Like this is something.
I wouldn't say any of them came easy.
Well, I mean, yeah, nothing good in life comes easy.
But yeah, I think that like I had a desire to like do these things. I've always had a desire to help people. And so like as I've walked that journey, the Lord showed me like, okay, I'm good at this. Like there's value in this for other people, not just myself. And so I just do it. I don't know how to answer this question.
Yeah. Sorry.
I think like what you're saying, it just comes from like doing it
Yeah.
and like over time.
Riley, what
Just,
do you
like,
think
happens.
Tyson's gifting is?
Well, I mean, after meeting with him for about a year, it's obviously discernment, and not only that, but like seeing through my crap, and just seeing what is my flesh and what is like my actual heart and soul on things, and where my flesh fails, and just like differentiating that. And that's something that like is honestly like almost invaluable. Like, is that the right word? Invaluable. That's not the right word for it. Something that's like is very valuable anyway. Because like I'm not good at that, especially just being kind of self-aware with those things. So yeah, I 100% would say discernment because I've been through about a year of it now. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think I might come from discernment too. I've always just been like, okay, like this is what needs to be the next step, and so I don't really do much thinking about how things appear. I'm just like, well, this is what I need to do now.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe leadership too.
Yeah. Now that one was definitely through doing it and through opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah.
Leadership was.
Hmm.
All right, next person, please. I'm done.
Yeah, Krista.
Krista, go
I
next.
don't like
I want
answering
to
these
hear
kinds
it.
of
I want to hear what you say,
Mm.
and then I'll tell you if you're wrong.
It's not,
That's why I don't want to answer this.
I'm real gifted in speaking in tongues.
Can I just say that? Can I just say what?
No.
Can I take a spiritual gifts test really fast and then tell you?
right
No.
now
Right, yeah.
on the
just
pod.
right now.
Yes, that's right. We'll show you guys how to do this.
No. I hate
Am I
Go.
really answering? Can you answer for me?
I need you to answer first.
It's not prideful. Just say it.
Well, I feel like it is, and that's why I feel like I don't know. I don't know. I guess I would say evangelism. Is that right?
Is that right?
Keep going.
And leadership.
Try with confidence.
I'd say evangelism and leadership, and that's it.
100% teaching.
I'm
100% teaching.
Yeah.
My goodness.
And I think, and with those things, like I would also say this, like those are things that I enjoy doing, and I think,
Oh,
That's it.
don't forget faith. 1 second. Just looking at the list. Don't forget faith.
well, I feel like that kind of goes for.
I just think you're a very faithful woman.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah,
But-
he's right.
I think again, it's just like over time, I've like, especially in again, just going back to my time like in Tulsa and just like gaining a heart for evangelism, it became something that like I enjoyed, and I think that's something. And I was even reading on this yesterday, just how the Lord gives us these things, because He wants us to. He wants us to glorify Him by being joyful in Him and in the things He's given us to do. And so, like, with the gifts He's given us, like, there's joy in that. I mean, there's, with Tyson, I mean, there's probably joy in, like, meeting with guys and being able to help them realize things just about, like, their spiritual walk with the Lord. And for me, like, I enjoy teaching. I enjoy sharing the gospel. And, like, those things glorify the Lord. So yeah, and that's again, that's kind of the point I want to make is like, I have joy in doing these things, but also, yeah, kind of like Tyson, like just over the years, figuring out those things, and having opportunities, and I mean, just being faithful to the things that are right in front of me, and taking those things and being like, okay, like what does the Lord want me to do with this? And through those, like I have gotten opportunities to teach and lead and share the gospel, and because of that, like it's been, yeah, it's just been evident to me that those are the things that, I mean, the Lord has given to me. And also it's a thing that I enjoy to be able to, like teach others in and help others in, like in teaching them how to share the gospel. Or I remember like back in Tulsa, one of the girls I discipled, she had a couple opportunities to teach, and we would sit down and I would be able to help her like, okay, this is how, like I like take scripture, and this is how like I teach through a book of the Bible, like just things like that. And so it's always just like just those opportunities that the Lord gives me to use my gifts are just always times that I enjoy, and times that I again just see through like different opportunities and different times I get to use them. So okay, Kyle, it's your turn.
Hey, good job.
Thanks.
Good job.
Nice.
I like looked over at your questions, and I saw that was one of them, and I was like, can I leave?
Panic.
I shouldn't have shown up.
When you saw the title of spiritual gifts, you didn't think we were going to talk about our own personal ones?
Honestly, no.
She was like, I should have been late or later. I shouldn't have came.
Should've just
Oh, guys, I'm sorry. I totally forgot it was today. I'm not going to make it. Oh, no.
Just filming without me.
Yeah, just go ahead and have fun.
I would have left your chair empty too, so it would have been real awkward framing wise.
It's just like an awkward.
Yeah.
In remembrance
Yeah.
of you. Yeah, I mean, I think for most people, like answering this question isn't necessarily like, I think a super comfortable one because you feel like you're just boasting about yourself, which is not the case. Like I can probably pick off more of my weaknesses than I can, strengths. I mean, discernment's definitely one. And that's something that I would say has, I mean, just been around for like a while. There's always been maybe not the ability to explain why something is wrong, but just the feeling of that's not right. Like that doesn't sound right. That doesn't feel right. Ever since, like I became a believer, just certain things and the way that they're describing things like, I don't believe that's accurate biblically. And so that's just kind of a big one for me. I mean, some of the other things, like I would say faith, because I'm just very much, hey, I don't know the solution. I don't know what it necessarily looks like, but I believe that, the Lord will provide and get us through this, in whatever way that looks like. And so it's something that, I don't like fall into giant, overwhelming times of anxiety and worry, because of that. Now, some of the other things, like I'm a big like vision guy, to where it's like, hey, and this is why it's beneficial having Tyson, Krista, Kenny like around, Dylan, because like, hey, okay, here's the big picture. Like this is what we want to do, and then having these people are like, all right, well, hey, here are the steps that we need to take, to make this happen. And so, really, just kind of keeping those things, and then other things that people have told me in the past. I'm just very relational, and I've actually had, and I can remember multiple times where having conversations with people that they are kind of taken aback at, like, hey, how did you connect with these people? Like, it doesn't make sense that they like you, because like the interests just seem different. I don't understand. Like, it always seems like they're very reserved and very difficult, and yet you're having conversations with them like they're actually wanting to talk to you. One of my best friends in college, and I've said this before, he literally was, threatening me, like, if you don't use this ability to connect with people for God's glory, I'm going to punch you in the face. Like, because it's not something that he had naturally, right? And so he's just like, Kyle, if you don't use your well-roundedness, which I know isn't necessarily in the book, but he's like, I'm going to beat you up, and I believed him. He was right, and so
And he did,
and he did when I didn't use it. But I think trying to be very intentional with those things, as we mentioned, like it's not something to boast about, because I can list off my weaknesses, and there are a lot of them. But using the things where God has strengthened me for His glory, and equipping others around me to do the same is something I strive to do. So, but you guys have been around me a lot. You've been around me a lot. You've been around me a lot. Tyson, you've been around me a little bit compared to them. So you guys can tell me anything that I'm wrong about. So.
I think you got it. But I will say something about not you.
Well, yeah, that's fair.
Because I don't know. This is one of my pet peeves. Is this the difference between pridefulness and confidence? Who gave you the gift?
The Lord?
I was like, is this a trick question?
The Lord.
Lord, yeah.
It's not a trick
And
question.
so, who are we boasting in when we talk about the gifts?
The Lord.
The Lord.
The Lord.
That's right.
And so, the Lord gave you a gift, and you used the gift, and so you boast in the Lord for the gift.
Yeah.
But like, are you going to hide your engagement ring from people?
It's not an engagement ring.
Sorry. Well, that one is.
Well,
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, but now it's
No.
whatever. Are you going to hide it from people?
No.
No, you're going to be like, look what my husband got me. And so that's the same thing with spiritual gifts. That's why I'll openly say what my spiritual gifts are, because like they're from the Lord.
You also went like kind of this little, I don't like talking about this.
No, I didn't understand. I don't understand how I got them.
Oh, okay.
I will fully tell you what they are
Okay.
because it's from the Lord.
Yeah.
And so I'm boasting in Him when I say, yeah, I'm good at discernment. Not me though.
Yeah.
Through Him.
That's good.
Do we actually need to know what our spiritual gifts are? Like, is that something that's a necessity for our faith?
I think similar to what Tyson just said, like I think it's helpful to kind of be aware because it's in two ways. It's beneficial to know your strengths, but it's also beneficial to know your weaknesses. Not that it's like, okay, hey, I want my weaknesses to become my strengths, but it's really so that, hey, wherever I'm at in life, like I want to make sure that I know how I can contribute to the body, the church, how I can serve in these capacities in different ways. And that doesn't mean I can't do other things. Like, okay, hey, yes, I may not enjoy kids ministry. That doesn't mean I shouldn't help serve in kids ministry. That's not what I'm saying. But in some ways, it's like, okay, hey, here are the things that I could definitely just easily, I enjoy doing, I'm passionate about serving in this way. It doesn't feel like a chore, so I can help out in this way. And there are plenty of things that people can do that I would say can fall into like a gifting. And it's like, as I mentioned, some people, organization, they get amped up about it. Like they are fired up to just go through and be like put it all in its place, right? In a very certain way. Love that. Okay, how can I use this? What are ways that I can serve this capacity? Other people, it's like, hey, you know what? I just enjoy being that person that gets to talk to everybody. Well, you should probably be somebody that's greeting people on Sunday morning. Like finding those things that you enjoy, but then also, knowing these areas, like, I don't enjoy this part, right? Like maybe I'm not prone to mercy. I'm not prone to really listening to people, their stories of, their woe is me. Like it always just kind of, for me, it's like, I just can't do it. I need to put myself in those situations sometimes. Why? For the glory of the Lord. Okay. I don't just wash my hands of it and say, no, that's not me. That's not my strength. So I think it's beneficial to know strengths and weaknesses. To also, for me, in my ministry position, like I want to surround myself with people that are strong where I am weak, where I am strong that they are weak, to where we help each other, we balance each other out. That's what we see as the church. We all have, different parts make up the body, right? We can't just all be a bunch of feet, right? Be weird. And so we'd get one thing done really, really well.
Run really fast.
That's right. So I think it is important to, and that's where I would say spiritual gift surveys are important. Personality tests can be helpful. Understanding my identity is not found in these things, using them in a proper way, just like Enneagram, whenever that came out, and then people like in their Instagram bio, 7 with a hint of 2.
Wing 3.
Wing 3. That's right. Yeah, I'm a 7. I can't do this. I remember, oh man, it was in college one time I was at IHOP with a guy I was meeting with, and our waitress, she was very into like the whole like astronomy, like the signs, like, oh,
The
hey,
zodiac signs.
yeah, the zodiac signs, that kind of stuff, and like introduced herself as, or like we were talking or whatever, and she's like, yeah, I'm an Aries. What are you? When were you born? I was like, I was born July 16th. She's like, oh, you'd be a Cancer. Like, we wouldn't be a good match. I'm like, we wouldn't have been a good match when you started this conversation. Like, no, I didn't say that. I promise I didn't say that. I was just kind of like, all right, can I just have some pancakes, please? But it's just, and I make light fun of it. But a lot of us find our identity in those things. Yeah. And that's not the goal, to find our identity in this number, or in this personality test, or even this spiritual gift survey, because they can be manipulated. You can easily answer those questions to come out on top. That's how it is. You can decide, these are the traits that are in this question. And that's where I would say take some of those, but then also ask trusted people around you. Say, hey, are these things that you're also seeing in me? Because Tyson's right. We want to boast in the Lord and how he has gifted us, and we want to use those for his glory. It's important for us to know what those are so that he can be glorified.
And I think, and Kyle's talking about kind of like subsects of these things. I think they're all kind of a catch-all, be-all for helps. And so, like, when we see that, though, it's like, oh, well, my gift's not listed. So, like, I'm no good. That's not true. You still serve a purpose. You still serve a role to help the body. And so we have to be obedient to that. And honestly, like, some people may struggle with this. Just hang out with someone who's gifted in discernment for a little bit and you'll figure it out. But, like, it's important that we help the church as the body, that we are part of the church of believers, or the body of believers, and we're using our gifts for the Lord. And so if you don't know him, I would say that you should try to find him, but it doesn't mean you have to know him to start serving the church.
Yeah.
So you can start serving the church and be like, well, Lord, that one wasn't it. In fact, the reason I work at the church I work for is I did a youth internship with them. And at the end of that youth internship, I was like, I did good work and stuff, but I was like, I'm not called to youth ministry. And so that doesn't mean that I neglected that role. It doesn't mean that I wasn't helpful to see things and learn and build me up.
Yeah.
But it is an answer. Like, the Lord answers through that. He's like, okay, this isn't your giftedness, but this is. And so through obedience of just stepping out and be like, okay, there's a role, there's a need that needs to be filled. I feel called to fill it. And then if it's not it, all right, well, let's find something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you bring up a good point with ministry, because I feel like a lot of times in ministry, especially if people are like, oh, I want to be a senior pastor, they think they have to do this stepping stone. Like, okay, hey, I need to be a youth pastor first. Hey, I need to be a children's pastor first. And I know that's how, like, churches kind of set things up to be like, okay, hey, kind of, get your feet wet a little bit, hey, get your hands dirty in these things, and then you kind of develop into this. I think it's kind of silly, because then you're asking somebody to do something they don't have a calling to do. And I'm not saying like, oh, hey, just suck it up and do it. Like, sometimes that can be the case. But it's also like, I never have felt right about doing that. If somebody's very sure about, hey, I've been called to do this. Okay, then find a way, an opportunity to be equipped, trained in that. Don't just be like, oh, well, I have to go through these steps before I can do this thing. And on the flip side, some people are like, man, I feel like the Lord's calling me to ministry, but I don't know what. Get plugged into a church and serve in all the different facets of ministry. Serve in kids ministry, serve in youth ministry, serve in, the discipleship groups, go on mission. Go spend not just mission like, hey, I'm spending 7 days, over spring break, to where 2 of those days are going to be fun days or whatever. Like, no. Go spend like 2 months. Go spend a semester. Go spend a summer. Like, give quality time over to the Lord, saying, okay, God, I want to see if this is what you've called me to. With that in mind. Because I think a lot of times we just, oh, yeah, that's not for me. I can't do kids. So, but how do you know if you haven't actually served in that? Because of that one interaction you had with your niece or nephew, and you're like, that was just too much. It's like, okay, but you didn't see maybe all the good things that can come from it too. So yeah. I would just encourage people, especially in ministry, to serve in multiple facets.
I also do want to add, like, don't feel bad about it either. Don't feel bad about not being called to something. So, like, with Tyson's scenario, like him not being called to youth ministry, that's okay. That's fine. That's just not something that Tyson's like going to be doing. And he did it for the time being, and like it was something that the Lord was calling him to do and to be obedient to right then. But obviously, he's in college ministry now, and that's what he's like. I don't know. That's what you feel like you're called to do.
Oh,
right?
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So it's okay that like it wasn't youth ministry, and like for me, it's just not missions. I've spent two months overseas, and I'm just like, that was the hardest no I've gotten in a long time. Of like, this is just not it. This is not where you're supposed to be at the moment. So it's okay. It's okay if it's a no, and you feel that.
Well, and that's the thing is, I think in that no, that doesn't mean, hey, I'm not going to help out if the need is there, right? It's not like you're sitting there saying, hey, if there's a need to go on a mission trip, it's not like I'm going to not go. But it's more of this like, okay, the Lord has not opened that door long term for me at this moment, right? And that's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So I think understanding, it's like, okay, something may be a no. That doesn't mean never. Like, oh, I'm never going to help out. It just means, hey, I don't need to be doing that full time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, if you can get comfortable with God telling you no, you'll get pretty far. It's okay. So oftentimes, like, we try to make God's no a yes, and we try to like white knuckle it instead of just being like, okay, God, that is definitely a no. And honestly, I think that is awesome. I love any answer from the Lord, yes or no, because that's clarity, a door shut or a door open. Awesome.
Okay, so with using our gifts effectively, where do we start? How do you start?
So yeah, discovering them, big part of that. And then I think you just start putting them into use, putting them into practice. Maybe you talk with your pastor, maybe you talk to the BCM director, maybe you reach out to, a leader, a mentor, say, hey, I've kind of taken this. You make sure, is this something you're seeing in my life as well? What are some opportunities for me to serve in this capacity? And then you take advantage of those opportunities, whether it's big or small. A lot of times we have these grandiose ideas, because this is what I used to do. It'd be like, oh man, like in ministry, like, oh, I'd love to be up there on that stage. That's not how God works. That stage is for certain people that God has in mind. It's not necessarily going to be you. That's not the point of serving him with your gifts, right? Like, is to be the person that's in front of everybody and acknowledge it. It's like, that may be what the Lord has for you down the road, but maybe not. Be content with what he has. But I would just say, like, start using them, start serving, getting involved in ways to put them into practice, to refine, allow the Lord to refine and chisel away the things that aren't of him, are great ways to start.
Mm-hmm.
I think to add on to that, like, find someone who's gifted in what you're gifted in, who's a little further along than you, and learn from them about that gift so you can refine it. And also, and this is what the Lord's been working on in my heart a few months ago, like, don't stop learning how to do your gift better. Because like I said, like, I'm gifted in discernment, and I don't remember, I think I was leaving the only place that you get coffee in Edmond, the Coffee Tree.
Yes.
And I was leaving, and I just met with someone, and I was kind of processing through it, and I was like, oh, like, okay, I kind of did this wrong, and I kind of like jumped to some conclusions here. And in my head, I was like, oh, but I'm good at this, so who cares? And then the Lord was just like, what do you mean? Like, I can always be getting better in it. And so, like, don't miss out on opportunities to, like, have those flaws pointed out by the Lord or by others. Because I think because something we're good at, it's easy for us to be prideful in it. Yeah. And so when someone points out an error in it, we're like, you don't know. Like, I'm gifted in this. Like, how could you call me out for that? Yeah. But, like, our whole life has rough edges. Yeah. And the Lord just wants to smooth them out.
Yeah, and I think even along with that, like, just taking time to be like, Lord, I know you've gifted me in this, but how can I grow in it? And just, like, making it a practice of humbling yourself before the Lord and being like, hey, I know you've given me this, like, gift of evangelism, but how can I grow in that? And understanding, like, you're never going to meet, like, a cap on your gift. Like, you've reached 100% in this gift or whatever, like, because you can always be growing in those things. Always be practicing them. And again, like, and I know we've talked about this a little bit, but even the gifts that you're not necessarily gifted in, like, growing in those. And again, like, you're not going to sit there and be like, oh, I'm not called to evangelism, so I'm just not going to share the gospel. Like, but asking Lord, like, Lord, I know this is something that I'm not strongly gifted in, but how can I grow in this? Like, show me that. And again, just humbling yourself before the Lord and asking him to grow you in the things that you are gifted in and things that you aren't gifted in that he still calls you to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think just to wrap it up, I mean, talking about spiritual gifts today, we really went over a lot of things of how to find it, how to find your spiritual gift, to find somebody that's really trusted in your life to speak into it. Not only how to find it, but how to use your spiritual gift and serving, and learning what you're spiritually gifted in and what you're not. And it's okay. It's okay to realize what your spiritual gifting is and to boast in the Lord. I think that's an important thing that we focused on too, is that the Lord deserves to be boasted in.
Yeah.
And for us to not be confident in the things we're spiritually gifted in is for us to waste glorifying the Lord. I mean, we really can glorify the Lord with what we're gifted in.
Yeah.
That's something he deserves. So if you're hearing this podcast and you're really just kind of confused about spiritual giftings, honestly, talk to one of us. And if you want to hang out and, get some coffee or get some lunch, we'd love to talk about it more. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for hanging out with us. Be sure to tune in next week, where we'll be having another awesome discussion. And if you want more information or want to ask us a question, make sure to follow us on Instagram at UCO BCM.